At the age of 12, Tycho Brahe was sent to study philosophy and rhetoric at the University of Copenhagen, one of the best universities in Europe at the time. But by the age of 13, his interest in astronomy and astrology was fired by an eclipse of the moon on 21 August 1560. Henceforth, he spent his nights observing the night sky. From boyhood, he knew almost perfectly all the stars and was familiar with the annual movement of the heavens. At the age of 15, Brahe was sent to the University of Wittenberg to continue his studies in law and medicine, but instead he began to buy astronomical books to read, as well as an up-to-date ephemeris showing the position of the celestial bodies throughout the year. He studied the constellations from star maps drawn by Albrecht Dürer, and soon realized that existing tables, both the Earth-centered one of Ptolemy and the recent Sun-centered table of Copernicus, were flawed. An astrological computation made by the young Brahe warned him that some accident might occur on 29 of December. At dinner in a tavern that night, a quarrel erupted with his distant cousin, Mandarupa Parsberga. The quarrel became so serious that the two students went outside into a churchyard and fought a duel in total darkness. Brahe was cut across the forehead and lost the middle part of his nose. The experience of recovering that winter strengthened his interest in alchemy and in medicine. The disfigurement of his nose was only partially hidden by a metal nose made from electrum, a mixture of silver and gold, which Brahe fashioned for himself and held in place with an adhesive salve, which he always carried in a small box. It earned him the title, "The Man with the Silver Nose." When it was destroyed by a pet dog one night while he was sleeping, he had 14 of them made to wear on different occasions. One of them eventually fell into the possession of Voltaire, who later offered it as a gift to Frederick the Great, presumably well cleaned and polished. After 9 years at different universities, Brahe finally settled in Augsburg in the spring of 1569, where he became friendly with Paul Hainzel, the burgomaster of the city. Together they constructed a great wooden quadrant to determine the altitude of celestial orbs, so big that it required 40 men to set it up. They also built a sextant and other instruments which surpassed those available at the time. With them, Brahe began making observations which earned the respect of contemporary astronomers. His horoscopes also attracted the attention of the powerful and the wealthy. The first work Brahe published was an astrological and meteorological almanac for the year 1573. He wrote it not for money, which he did not lack, but out of interest. It reveals his pious Lutheran faith as well as his astrological beliefs. There is no better teacher of theology, he argues, than the universe itself. As an astrologer, he did not doubt that celestial events, especially the moon, had a strong influence on the weather. But since there are local conditions on Earth, the effects will vary from place to place. His intention was therefore not so much to predict the weather as to study the discrepancies between the actual and the predicted weather, and thereby to investigate the nature of the relationship between heaven and earth. Brahe first came to prominence among astronomers with his 52-page pamphlet entitled De Stella Nova. In the previous year, at the age of 25 in 1572, he had seen on 11 of November from his observatory an exploding star to the northwest of the constellation of Cassiopeia, which shone brighter than Venus for more than a year. It was what is today known as a supernova, resulting from the explosion of a white dwarf star. This anomaly was yet another blow to the medieval world view of the Aristotelians, who believed that the heavens beyond the moon were fixed. Brahe exclaimed, "Let all philosophers, new as well as ancient, be silent. Let the theologians, interpreters of the divine mysteries, let them be silent. Let the mathematicians and describers of heavenly bodies be silent." Tycho Brahe moved next to Copenhagen and was invited to give a course of lectures at the university in which he defended the principles of astrology. All his life he believed in the influence of the celestial bodies on the earth. He declared, "To deny the power and influence of the stars is to detract from divine wisdom and influence." He was convinced that the ruling planets in a horoscope shaped the person's character, though he did not deny that people can be changed by lesser causes, such as upbringing, education, foreign travel, conversation, and things like that. He insisted that the reasons for the fundamental differences between people can be sought nowhere better than in astrology. Clearly well versed in the subject, he addressed the main traditional objections to astrology: that it is not always easy to determine the exact moment of birth, that twins born at the same time often have different fortunes, and that many people can die at the same time in a catastrophe when their horoscopes do not indicate identical death. To these objections he replied that astrologers do not claim that the sky acts in precisely the same way upon all those born at the same time, but that they are subject to diversity and are altered in different ways by heavenly influences. Aware of the concerns of theologians and philosophers that astrology appears too deterministic, he further argued that thanks to human consciousness and to freedom, we can rise above the influence of the stars. He said, "Nor is free will in any way made subordinate to the stars, but through it, under the guidance of reason, we can do very many things beyond the influence of the stars, if that is what is wished. Indeed, people can conquer whatever malevolent inclinations they may have from the stars. While traveling in search of a suitable site for a new observatory, Brahe happened to pass through Regensburg, Germany, to see the magnificent coronation festivities for King Rudolf in November 1575. He was invited to dine with the new Holy Roman Emperor and was asked to cast his horoscope. He counseled him not to marry, as his sons would only bring him misfortune, advice which Rudolf followed much to the horror of the House of Habsburg and the Vatican. Aware of Brahe's growing European reputation and fear of losing him to other monarchs, the King of Denmark, Frederick II, offered Brahe for life the use of a small island called Ven off the coast of Denmark. The island was visible from Hamlet's castle of Elsinore. Brahe was also given a handsome pension in order to build a castle observatory. He was delighted. The cornerstone was laid on 7th of August, 1576, on the astronomer's 30th birthday, at the most astrologically propitious time. The final structure was a palatial and well-equipped observatory on a hill called the Uraniborg, the City of the Heavens, named after Urania, the classical muse of astronomy, and Uranus, the Greek word for the heavens. It was designed on the Pythagorean principles of musical harmony and geometrical symmetry. The palace even had running water, unknown at Hampton Court or the Louvre at the time. The palace had mechanical fountains at the geometric center of the building. Brahe used his resources well at Uraniborg and built a reputation for his improvements to lunar theory and his vast collection of observations. A workshop was set up that produced the most advanced astronomical instruments of the day, including quadrants and armillary spheres that determined the positions of the stars. He designed a beautiful star map with all the signs of the zodiac engraved on a 3-meter globe, which became the centerpiece of his library. To house his instruments, he built a partly subterranean observatory called Sternenberg, or Star Castle. Tycho Brahe was the last great astronomer to work without a telescope. He enjoyed entertaining and opened his doors to the rich, powerful, and eccentric, including James VI of Scotland, during his visit to marry a Danish princess in 1590. Keen to pass on his knowledge, Brahe trained young people in reasoning and observation so that they could work as his assistants. At Uraniborg there was a dwarf called Jep, employed as a jester, and Brahe's assistants and guests would entertain each other with stories over long dinners. Throughout this period, Brahe continued to practice astrology. He had attributed the Great Plague that decimated Europe in 1566 to the unhappy conjunctions of Jupiter and Saturn 3 years earlier. Some of his predictions were confirmed, while others were less successful. Brahe was also a keen practitioner of alchemy, which he called terrestrial astronomy. Next to astronomy, it was his greatest intellectual passion. Earlier, at the age of 18, he had designed a huge solar mirror to help him make alloys of precious stones. At Uraniborg, he set up in the cellar a large laboratory which had 16 furnaces in order to give the correct degree of heat for his alchemical experiments. He even installed 5 furnaces in the main dining room on the ground floor, so that experiments could continue during meals and through the night. But he chose not to divulge his findings to the general public so they would not get into the wrong hands. Nevertheless, he was mainly interested in alchemy to produce medicines rather than gold. His elixir, based on Venice treacle, which contained traditional alchemical substances, was sold under his name by almost every apothecary in Germany as a remedy against epidemic disease. In 1596, realizing that his political and financial situation was deteriorating fast, Brahe decided to leave his beloved Uraniborg and its Renaissance gardens. He packed up his superb instruments, unique library of 3,000 books, and his alchemical laboratory, and boarded a specially commissioned ship accompanied by his wife, 5 children, servants, assistants, his personal secretary, and his future son-in-law. Brahe took up Rudolf II's long-standing invitation to come to Prague. He chose the splendid and comfortable Renaissance chateau Benaki na Jizru. It was built facing south on a cliff top 60 meters above the river, 36 kilometers northeast of Prague. It dominated the rolling landscape and had a free horizon on all sides, a perfect platform for observing the heavens. As he did at Uraniborg, he opened the doors to those with a genuine interest in astronomy and lavishly entertained his guests who came from all over Europe. Being Rudolf's personal astrologer was the price he had to pay for his patronage. The emperor insisted that Brahe come to Prague so that he could draw up astrological predictions for him on a regular basis. The emperor was worried about the Turkish front, the choice of generals, even the possibility of his own assassination. Brahe told him that there were good and bad days for certain actions and decisions. Not mincing words, he predicted that Rudolf could be assassinated, like Henry III of France, early in the new century. The revelation from such a respected source had a devastating effect on the emperor. It not only intensified his paranoia, but made his ingrained melancholy worse. He increasingly refused to give audiences and barely left his private chambers, seeing in any unknown face a potential assassin. For his part, Brahe was still bitter about his departure from Denmark, and his instinctive pessimism took a turn for the worse. Years passed, and Brahe died 24th of October 1601. His final wish was that his assistant, Johannes Kepler, might present all his demonstrations in conformity with his hypothesis. On the final night, Kepler recorded that Brahe repeated over and over again in flawless Latin, Ne frustra vixisse videor, or let me not seem to have lived in vain. He did not have to worry. He could not have had a better successor to ensure his reputation. On his tombstone is written in Latin, neither power nor wealth. Only art and science will endure.